So what if I told you that for 3,000 years, a sacred tradition has held this incredible secret? That truth isn't something that's just handed down from on high, but something that gets hammered out right here on Earth, in human debate. Let's get into it.
You know, when we think about ancient texts like the Bible, we tend to see them as, well, finished products, right? Closed books. But what if they're not? What if the silences, the gaps in these stories, are actually the most important part? What if they're deliberate invitations for us to think, and maybe even more importantly, to argue?
And that brings us to our first big idea. What happens when Scripture is silent? See, for the ancient rabbinic sages, these gaps weren't mistakes or flaws in the text at all. Nope, they were invitations. A challenge, really, to dig deeper, to ask questions, and to start a whole new conversation right where the original text just stops.
Now, there's a name for this method of interpretation. It's called midrash. And honestly, it's a total game changer. It means the biblical text isn't the final word on anything. It's the first word. It's the opening argument in a debate that has been going on for literally thousands of years, and believe me, it is still going strong today.
Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, let's take a look at our first case study, the story of two brothers. And we're not talking about just any two brothers, oh no. We are talking about the original, the most infamous sibling rivalry in all of history, Cain and Abel.
So we're in the book of Genesis, chapter 4. You probably know the basics, right? Cain and Abel, sons of Adam and Eve. They both make an offering to God. God accepts Abel's gift, but not Cain's. Cain gets really angry. And right there, the story has this massive narrative hole, a missing piece that has been sparking debates for centuries.
I mean, just look at this. The text literally says Cain said to his brother, Abel, and then nothing. Crickets. It just jumps straight to the murder. The actual conversation is just gone. What on earth did Cain say? What could possibly have been said that led to the very first murder? The Bible is completely silent right where it matters most.
And this, right here, is where the rabbis rolled up their sleeves and got to work. They just couldn't let that silence stand. So they started to imagine what that missing conversation was all about, using it to explore the deepest roots of human conflict. They imagined the brothers arguing about everything we still argue about: land, property, religion, who gets what. They took this short, mysterious story and turned it into this incredibly powerful human drama.
And then you have Cain's famous line. God asks where Abel is, and Cain snaps back, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Now, for the rabbis, this wasn't just a snarky question. It was an accusation. This is Cain talking back to God. It is pure defiance. He's basically saying, hey, you're the one in charge here. This is on you, not me.
So the story of Cain shows us how the rabbis could fill a narrative gap. But now let's pivot to an even more challenging story, one that raises a question so deep it's been echoing through the ages ever since: the binding of Isaac.
The moral problem here is it's huge, and it's haunted people for centuries, whether they're religious or not. Why would a good, benevolent God command a father to kill his own child? It's a test that just seems to fly in the face of all logic and morality.
This story is known in Hebrew as the Akedah, or the binding, and it comes from Genesis 22. For the rabbis, just blindly accepting this terrifying command, well, it wasn't an option. For them, the silence in this story wasn't about missing dialogue, but about the characters' inner worlds, their turmoil. They felt they had to get inside the story to really feel the human drama and the moral crisis at its core.
So what did they do? They added details to flesh out the psychology. In their telling, Satan himself shows up, trying over and over to tempt both Abraham and Isaac to just turn back. And get this, Isaac isn't a little kid. The rabbis calculated his age to be 37, a grown man. And here's the absolute key. He agrees to the sacrifice. He's not a passive victim here. He's a willing, conscious participant in this awful ordeal.
And this is so important to understand. These additions don't change the Bible. They're meant to reveal its hidden depths. The goal was never to rewrite the story, but to wrestle with its most difficult ethical and emotional questions. It transforms the characters from just being blind followers into people who are making these agonizing moral choices.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this is all just creative writing, right? Well, not exactly. It's all based on a single radical idea that holds up this entire tradition. And this, right here, is the heart of it all. The concept of it is not in heaven.
This phrase, Lo ba shamayim hi, it comes from the book of Deuteronomy, and it is an absolute bombshell. It means the Torah, the law, the text, it's been given to us. It belongs to humanity now, and it is our job, our responsibility to figure out what it means, using our own minds and our own reason. We're not supposed to just sit around waiting for a voice from the clouds to give us the answers.
So what you end up with are two very different ways of reading the same text. In much of the Christian tradition, the Old Testament is often read as a kind of prophecy, a story that's building up to the New Testament. But in the Jewish tradition we're exploring, it's an open-ended conversation. Every single generation is invited to pull up a chair and join the debate.
And that's exactly why this ancient approach still feels so incredibly relevant today. It doesn't treat sacred texts like dusty old museum pieces. It turns a static, finished book into a living, breathing conversation that stretches across thousands of years.
In this tradition, the argument itself is considered holy. Yeah, you heard that right. Disagreement isn't a problem to be solved. It's a sign that you're paying attention, that you're taking the idea seriously. The goal isn't to find the one final correct answer and shut down the discussion. The goal is to have a deeper, more meaningful engagement with the text, and just as importantly, with each other.
So what does this all mean for us right now? If our most foundational stories aren't meant to be just passively accepted but actively argued with, then what are the important conversations we should be having today? What are the silences in our own modern stories that we need to start filling in?